Yo, 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 what is up? How are we all doing? I'm hoping this is working. I believe it is. Um, yeah, how are we all doing? Let me know if you can hear me, and obviously you can't see me, but let me know if you hear me. We just got a couple minutes until we go live here on X. The last couple days, or the last couple times that we have done these, I keep getting this robotic thing and I can only pinpoint it to when people come into the stream or come into the X space and they add on as like speakers. So I'm not exactly sure why that's happening. And what's up, Max? Good to see you here, brother. I'm not exactly sure why that's happening. So hopefully we don't get any robotic noises from the other people. But I think I even checked Kevin's live simul stream last time, and it was also kind of wacky. Like his audio was good, but the other people's audio at certain times got a little robotic. So I don't know. I don't know. We're trying some weird stuff here. I literally have a browser open with the X, like the X website, and then I have an overlay on this stream thing, so you can only see this, but I'm technically sharing that tab and the audio of that tab over to there. And so my audio is going through here. It's like I don't know if there's like a two channel situation going on. Regardless, though, normally when we record the audio directly through X, which we do every time, and then I pull that out. The if you're looking for pristine audio quality, it will be on the actual podcast app, and the RSS feed there. So anywhere you want to see that, it's great. And there's no video anyway, so it doesn't matter. But excited to be doing another town hall. This should be really interesting. I've never spoken directly to Chris Pearson like in a setting like this, DM'd a bunch. I'm not sure if Kevin has either, and I am excited to hear about Chris's, probably some of his past, and also this. If you're not familiar, real quick, high level, I'm sure we'll get into it. But Chris Pearson is the it's thesis, right? Like the last one of the last big WordPress drama things from whenever that was, like mid 2010s, I think, somewhere in there. And it was before me. It was before. I think it was early like 2010s. And yeah, it was very interesting with the licensing and things like that. So Chris is experienced. He still has a YouTube channel. He still has X and everything. He's constantly talking about this stuff. He still has the theme, interesting thoughts and ways that he approaches software. So I'm super excited to chat with him. If you guys have any questions, leave them in the chat here. Go to X, join the space. Let's have a good conversation. I'm super excited. Hopefully, again, all the audio and everything works, but every single time it's worked well on X, just not on these simulcast things. So hopefully it's half decent. If it's not, I apologize, and we'll try to continue to make it a little better. But I'm excited for this one today. Quick housekeeping until Kevin starts this up is I do plan on being live again tomorrow, even though I have a face, even though I look like Frankenstein right now. But I do plan on being live, so we will do that. All right, let me try to get in the space here. Start listening. Okay, I am in. Let's see. Join as co-host.
Hey, everybody, hang tight. We'll get Mark in here.
Yo. Can you hear me?
I can. Let me go ahead and switch my audio here. All right, say something, Mark.
Hello.
Here we go. We're good.
Nice.
All right, we just need the man of the hour, and we can get started.
Yes, sir. I wonder if he set the reminder. Let's see.
Let's drop him a link in the DMs.
Yeah, I'll do that here real quick. There we go.
Yeah, Matt Medeiros in the house. Welcome, Matt.
Steve,
got
Greg,
Steven and Greg. Hey, Greg's. Shalan Alaman. It's a tough one. There he is.
What's up?
Let me invite him to co-host. Did you already take care of that?
Not yet.
He's gone.
And he's gone. He was telling
You're
me.
so close.
He was telling me he has some issues with the mobile app now. So, but I think he's on desktop.
Okay. I just invited him to speaker pool.
I did click approve.
I haven't started my stream yet, so we'll get this going and then we'll hit start on it.
Gotcha. Nice. I saw him in there again, but don't know. I'm gonna blame Elon. It's pretty much the way to go here with this. With anything X related, just blame Elon for the UI troubles and the connectivity troubles.
Maybe we can get Doge on the X Spaces tech.
Seriously, I need something. He messaged me, said he's not hearing anything, but I don't think you can't see him in there, can you?
No, he's not in here right now.
Let's see.
And I don't think he was in here long enough to hear anything anyway. Both times was like 2 seconds.
Yeah. Okay. Said he joined. Let's see here. His UI says he's a listener. He might be like, they have this stupid anonymous thing though. Like he may be in there.
Yeah.
I think he's refreshing. He's refreshing his browser.
Yeah, I would tell him to jump out and come back in.
I feel like this is a more authentic X.
He's back.
It's a more authentic X space type of thing here.
It is.
We're just like.
It's 45 minutes of tech and 15 minutes of content.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna try to. He's in here. Hopefully, he can hear. I'm gonna invite him to co-host or to speak. I guess to just speak is the easiest thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they have to go speaker then co-host.
There he is.
There we go.
How about this? Are we working?
Let's go.
Yes. All right. Figured it out.
All right. Let me go ahead and click go live, and we'll get right into it. We got some listeners already waiting. Here we go. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of WP Town Hall. This is the show that dives deep into the important topics in WordPress and allows you to be an active participant. You can participate in our X Spaces live stream. There is a link. If you go to wptownhall.show, that will always tell you what the upcoming episode is, topic, guest. It'll give you a link to join the X Spaces. A lot of times, like I hit, remind me on X. It doesn't always do that. Okay. So the best approach is mark it on your calendar for real. Go to wptownhall.show, click the link when it starts. You'll be right in. Okay. If you are a listener in the X Space, you can raise your hand or join the speaker pool. We can invite you to speak, and you will be part of the conversation. So this is an interesting and valuable format where you don't just listen to a podcast, you actually get to participate in it. Okay, we have my co-host, Mark Zemansky. How's it going, Mark?
Kevin, I am super excited for this episode. I'm happy to have Chris here. I just want to dive into it.
Yeah. Our guest is Chris Pearson today. I'm gonna go ahead and let Chris just give his introduction. I know he's been around for a while in the WordPress ecosystem, but go ahead, Chris, and let everybody know what's up. What's your history?
Yo, everybody. So I made the first $1 million WordPress theme a long time ago. First premium theme. It's called Thesis. And in 2010, I reached a level of notoriety when Matt Mullenweg asked me to adopt the GPL license and use public pressure to try and get me to do that. I said no, and that started a big thing, and eventually actually killed my business over time. And but I didn't let that get me down or anything, and I've stayed in the WordPress space ever since. I still develop templates and things like that, but really my eye, I'm tracking a different ball these days. My eyes on a different ball, and that really is what kind of pages serve the audience. The people who use the internet, the way they use the internet is constantly changing because of social media and other pressures. And I'm always tracking, like, where are we going to go next? What do we need to do to serve visitors in the best way possible? Because that affects everything that we build. So I'm still building for internet. I want to make sure I'm building the best tools that are getting the best results. So I'm trying to track all the things that are, that are affecting that. And I think we're going to talk about a lot of that stuff today.
Yeah, let's just segue right into it. So we bounced around some topics, and I think we kind of boiled it down to this topic of the websites that we're building are broken. And I think you have the main set of opinions on that. So I'm going to let you just set the stage for us. Tell us how the websites we're building are broken.
All right. So the main thing that's changed, and I'd say in the last 6 years, that is really remaking the whole, entire websites and what we need to do with our websites, is the nature of attention. And two things now. So it used to be that blogs and websites were our main entry points for exploring the internet. You maybe do a Google search, you end up on a website, and then you would explore within that website and learn about new topics, maybe get links to other sites, and you kind of build your own network branch through the things that you visited. That has shifted massively in the last 6 years, especially. Now we do internet through social media. And really, with one other avenue is through emails. So emails and social media are now the highways. The highways used to be websites, but now the highways are social media and emails. And websites now are off ramps from this highway. They're exits. They're not the main thing. They're the thing we get off every now and then to go look at. And when we get off the highway, we're looking to do something specific. Like, I got to pee, so I'm going to the gas station. There's a specific reason why we get off the highway. And so now at this point, there's a specific reason why people visit websites. And this little shift is huge. It's everything. It changes the way we need to build pages. It changes exactly what visitors are looking for when they reach our websites. And specifically, there's a transaction taking place. So the transaction goes something like this. Within an email or within a social media post, somebody makes a promise of information, a promise of something that you can get. And when that person, the visitor, goes to the website, they are looking to close that transaction as quickly as possible. They want reassurance that they are in the right place to close that transaction. Now, this doesn't have to be a monetary transaction. It can just be information. You could set up an information gap, and they go to your website, boom, they want to close that gap right away. It can be as simple as information. It can be as complicated as a sale. But the bottom line is, our pages have not really been built to close those gaps immediately. Over the last 15 years, the way, the trends that have happened in web design, the way we build pages, the way our, templates are constructed and all that stuff hasn't really spoken to this new reality of what I call attention design. And that's where I've shifted my focus now for 6 years. This is where the future definitely lies. It's all about attention design and catering to exactly what visitors expect when they get off the highways of the internet and visit our websites.
So what would you say are the hallmarks of this attention design? What specifically, what's the difference? What needs to change? What was the old way, and then what is the new way?
Perfect. So the old way is visual density and lots of different options. So by options, I mean something as simple as a navigation menu. We built these big navigation menus with drop downs, and a whole panel would pop up and you could scroll over, 16 links within each little subsection, something like that. That is options. And there's an interesting psychological effect that options have on people. When you present people with a bunch of options, they feel compelled to make a decision. But the problem is, when people have very little information about making a decision, they end up not making any decision at all. They leave. So you're creating a situation by presenting someone with a bunch of options. You're creating a situation where there's a tension there, and you're like essentially asking too much of somebody. So that's one simple expression of that. Another one could be like having a sidebar with a bunch of links and crap that's not relevant to the current page. So even something, so I talk about this a lot. There's a big theme that I have is horizontals in web design have been a near constant for the past 15 years. And in fact, I kind of think we started to use them more. I think there is kind of a reduction in that now, but like horizontals, any element that's presented horizontally, you have to be very careful with this now. The web is a top-down medium. For attention to work perfectly, like it just needs to be a simple top-down flow. So when we introduce any horizontally oriented elements, it has to be for a really specific purpose. So something like cards can be presented like 3 across if you've got like options for a product, something like that, because that might be the focus of a page. You're asking somebody to choose what thing is going to be right for them. But the caveat is that has to be the only thing they're deciding on that page, right? So you can use horizontals, but you have to know how you're using them. We, prior to now, for the last 15 years, we've kind of just thrown diarrheaed all these horizontals all over web pages in the form of navigation menus, in the form of like content on the left, sidebar, and a bunch of non sequitur stuff on the right, that kind of thing. We've used horizontals because we feel compelled to fill up white space. That convention has to die. The web is a top-down medium. Attention works very well in a top-down manner. It can work horizontally, but like I said, it has to have a specific purpose. So there's just these little caveats that kind of shift what we've been doing for many years.
So when you say horizontals, my mind immediately went to sliders, carousels, things. But you're actually lumping in the navigation itself, a grid of cards that doesn't even scroll horizontally. It's just cards happen to be next to each other because they're in a grid. You're lumping kind of all of those things together.
All those things qualify. And I mentioned nav menu specifically because I think that's sort of an arresting thing for people. But I'm telling you, we cannot discount the psychological effects that asking people to choose an option. We can't discount the effect that that has.
Right. But there's an isolation of like, at least in people's mind, I think, where the navigation exists as a, like, I know I can use that later if I need it, but like, I'm going to interact with what's on this current page first. And then if I need to go somewhere else, I know I can scroll back up to the navigation, for example. Like, how are you parsing that in terms of the user psychology?
Well, for one thing, I think I mentioned this earlier. We stuff navigation menus with too much, so it creates people have this this just innate desire to like show all this stuff. Here's all this stuff I have to offer, like everybody's Walmart. Well, we don't want everybody to be Walmart, is the thing, but everybody wants to show off all this stuff that they have. But that is a self-defeating thing to do. My websites have tons of stuff from from the last 18 years of content production, but I know that only certain things are hot right now. And my navigation needs to only speak to those things that are hot and relevant right now. So that does mean a lot of stuff is harder to get to, maybe not going to be seen at all, but I have to accept that, knowing that those are low value things to the current audience. And I don't think that designers and even website, owners and stuff have done a very good job of this. I don't think they do a good job of making those kinds of assessments. I think it needs to be like encouraged and taught for people to actually do better than just vomiting it all out there and saying, "Oh, please look at all this stuff I have."
Yeah. So you would agree that there's like different degrees of horizontals. Like, for example, you can have a very basic menu, and so that's you have a horizontal. It exists, okay. But then there's like a mega menu situation. That would be like the next level up of, okay, you're flooding the person with options. And then same thing with a slider. I've always been against sliders, and I consider a slider to be, I know these things aren't well defined in web design, but for me, a slider is like a one at a time slide kind of thing, which I've always been against because the second, third, fourth, fifth slides they're hidden. Okay. And then, but you have like a carousel situation where it would be, I can see 2, 3, 4 items at a time, but then they still slide to show more if I want to interact with it. But to me, these are like different degrees of horizontals if you were grading from like a bad to worse kind of scenario, right? Or
absolutely. Well, that's what I was saying. I was like, there's certain ways you can use them that are effective, but you have to know what you're doing. And I don't trust the general population to do a good job of this. I mean, it's got to be straight up about that. I think if you give a designer, say, "Oh, you can use some," they're gonna barf them all over the page, and it's gonna be trash. But like, for example, if you have a side scrolling grid of like 4 cards or something, like 4.5 show, and it's like testimonials, and people can scroll sideways to reveal more, I think that's fine. I think that's great. That's a good way to do it because you're not taking up a lot of vertical real estate with all these testimonials and stuff like that. So there's little nuances there, but I would want somebody to really understand what they're doing before they go deploying these elements.
But you were saying a minute ago, like, so if I have a nav, that's one horizontal. Then I have a grid of cards, that's another horizontal, like further down the page. And then down the page further, I might have a carousel. But these things they usually should contain different topical things. And for me, like a homepage is kind of it's like a menu almost in itself. It's like, here's a lot of what we offer. Now, it doesn't have to be this way. I mean, you could do like a very landing page focused homepage, right? But for somebody who shows up and they're kind of like, okay, what does this place have to offer? It's like, okay, well, here we have our services. And down here, by the way, did you know we have events? And, are you saying let's transition away from that, make every page have a singular focus? And then if so, I guess you just relegate everything else. Like, you're also kind of against the navigation. They can't go up and get the things that they might find deeper.
I'm just saying it can't be the way it has been. That's what I'm saying there.
Okay.
I'm not saying no navigation. I'm saying you got to be careful.
You got to be careful. Okay. So this takes us back to, it is a constant debate and fight, really a fight, honestly, between the client, the developer, the designer, and even maybe whoever one of those. It could be one, it could be all, it could be a independent person doing the kind of marketing strategy. You have the copywriter involved. Like, there's all of these different disciplines, and there's always this fight between, well, this guy thinks we should do it this way, this girl thinks we should do it this way, and then the client has completely separate opinions. Yep. How are you proposing that should be managed in this regard?
Well, I love that you said it exactly the way you said it, because you didn't mention the most important person of all. That is the visitor.
Correct.
The visitor has to care. And that's the challenge that every website owner has right now. We've got to make the visitor care. I promise you, the visitor does not care. When you described just a minute ago, like on the homepage, here's kind of a menu of everything that we have to offer. Well, that speaks to the nature of internet usage that no longer exists. We do not go to websites to explore and to browse. We go to websites to close a transaction. Nobody knows about your business and just shows up on the webpage and like learns about it. It's like, oh, I'm going to work with them. That's just not how it works anymore. It did work that way once upon a time, and my God, it was so much easier to do everything. But those days are gone. So now people are going to know, like, oh, DIY Themes is offering this e-commerce site package. It's cheaper than anybody else can do it. And you get a real fast, easy site that's you can manage. If they don't see that on the homepage, they may not find it. It's even in my nav menu, but I don't trust that that is good enough to close that transaction if somebody has that little snippet of info and is going to my site to look for it. So it is just a total rethinking of the whole thing, and it has to be visitor focused, because the nature of attention and the way visitors work is going to determine whether or not you're a success or a failure.
If I could just jump in for a second. So Chris, like, I feel what you're saying here, and we're simulcasting these on like YouTube and different platforms as well. And I got a comment from Brian Cords in my chat that is kind of saying like, this is more of like a landing page feel than a website. So obviously landing pages, like, just in general have had a place in this ecosystem of web design, right? They're not really like full blown websites. Maybe they're just like a singular thing. Like, I think when you say the words like no navigation, that is one trigger in my mind. It's like, okay, we're building landing pages here. So if I could understand your thought process here, do you have, and really how have you arrived at this specifically? Is that kind of how you're feeling about this typical website now, based on all the context that you described, that websites should kind of be more like singular purposed or very like tightly focused, and they're almost more of like a landing page? Like, is one thing that you would say is like most websites just have too much stuff on them, like in general? Is that kind of where we're going, or is there more nuance to that?
I think it's kind of generally it. So websites have, especially if it's been around a while, we all have so much stuff that we want to share with potential visitors. Say, hey, look, we do all this cool stuff. But the visitor doesn't care. That's the problem. The visitor doesn't care. The visitor cares about what is immediately relevant to them. And they're not there to like explore and figure out what's relevant to them. You have to have like a link on social media that spoke exactly to them, or a link in an email that spoke exactly to them, and it takes them to a page that's like super, super relevant. So that does push us more. If you've got like a meter here, the meter is definitely pointing over to this is more like a landing page than a OG website. It's definitely more on the landing page side of things. There's no question about that. But like I said, tendering the user's attention is very tough. Maybe, like, so there's other degrees here that you can get into if you're really trying to massage attention. So for example, you could send somebody to a page that the whole purpose of this page is to make the user curious to explore what you have, right? Not everything's going to close, but then, you've taken them through, you've spoken to their situation, maybe at the top of the page, and then you introduce a couple links that might be relevant to them, and you're able to show them like 2 or 3 options, like, oh, here's different ways you can work with me or whatever, something you could buy, a service you could get, someone you could talk to, something like this. There's different ways to introduce those things. But my argument is that if you don't speak to the visitor's purpose right away, you're really losing badly.
Yeah. I mean, again, in principle, I do agree with the attention thing. I mean, it's getting kind of wild now. Everybody has like kind of TikTok brain in a way. So I agree with all that. One thought I have around this is, do you feel like your position on this is like super innovative and everything right now? Like, meaning, obviously, I do think that, like, I think that there's a level of innovation and insight to this, like thought leadership around that. But my thought is, like, do you see anyone, I mean, maybe you're doing it personally, but do you see anyone in the wild? Have you seen any good examples of doing what you're trying, like what you're describing here? Has this like caught on to a degree at all, or like, or did you just kind of like, or you feel like you're pioneering that thought process the most?
Well, I mean, I've got some people that use my software who have been kind of into these same topics for quite a while, who have changed the nature of their businesses. This one guy runs tours in Rome. He's like a Catholic tour guide, basically, for Rome, and he has really bolstered his business by just shoring it down to like, okay, here's the guided tours, here's the times a year you can do it, all that stuff. So like that's kind of transformed his business. So I've been able to watch stuff like that, but more I'm taking market cues. So like the success of Substack, the success of Gumroad type pages. These people don't have websites. There's no way for like an audience member so this person sells Gumroad products, okay, in their big social media account. And then the audience will go click on this one product that he links to, and they go to Gumroad, and all it is a way to buy that product. There's like no other information. There's no like about page. There's no nothing. And yet they're selling, millions of dollars a year of these info products on Gumroad. Like, how does that work? Should they have a website? Don't people need all this information? The answer is no. They got the context from social media, and all they needed out of the website side of things was to close. And when they went to that page, here's how to buy it. Like, it's really simple, and those transactions work. So I'm seeing the rise of those kinds of things, and you have to like balance that against, well, here's what we're doing with websites. It's totally different than what we're seeing over here with Gumroad and Substack and stuff like that. What gives?
I think in a lot of cases, I agree with this. I obviously, and we've all had our share of clients who, oh, we want to put this on the homepage. We want to put this on the homepage. And there is always an explanation of like, okay, I get it, but like they don't care. And it's really not that important. Also, maybe it is important, but it's not important right now. Okay. And it's almost kind of like positioning the dominoes and figuring out what your first domino is that's going to knock the rest of the dominoes down. Like, for example, a business owner might feel like their events that they throw are really important, but guess what? You don't care about the events until you've been a customer for 6 months. Then you might care about the events. So let's not put the events on the homepage. Let's figure out the domino that gets the person into the ecosystem, in as a client. And then guess what? They can learn about events later once they're in. They can learn about the next thing, the next thing. It also kind of is that like free prize inside concept. You don't have to tell them everything that's in the box before they sign up. You find those things that are very important to them, you get them to sign up, and then everything else they discover that's inside the box after they sign up is a free prize. Inside that, now they're just more joyful about their decision, right? So everything doesn't have to be presented up front. I 100% agree with that, and I think a lot of sites can be simplified. A lot of sites, and when I do WDD Live every 2 weeks, we do website critiques. I'm constantly harping on get rid of the sliders, get rid of the mega menus, get rid of all this distracting stuff, all this too much, all this me, us focused copy. Okay, we talk about the same patterns over and over and over again. But I want to challenge you with an example that at a larger scale. How would, for example, Apple apply a concept like this? You go to apple.com, they have a lot of shit they need to sell to a lot of different people. And yeah, they have landing pages for everything too, but they also are using the traditional website format that you are kind of arguing against. So how do you reconcile a company like Apple?
Okay. You brought up quite a few things here that I want to address, like on the way to this. This is great. So, gosh, there's so many things there. I kind of lost my train of thought. So the first one, you nailed it. So you described a process, like, okay, there's free stuff inside. Well, that describes a process, not a singular web page. And what are web pages? Web pages are essentially information. You know, if it's useful information, then the web page is going to work. If it's not useful, it's just a throwaway. So our websites exist now as part of a process, and we need to see them as that. And that process may include emails, it may include socials, it includes stuff outside of the website, and the website fits into that process in some way. That fundamentally changes the nature of the way we build the pages, what appears where, the sequence, the whole thing. So it's part of a process. It is no longer the means of discovery. It's no longer the avenue of discovery. Now, next thing, speak to the Apple question. This is so great because I use this in sort of a derogatory way when I talk about this to people. You're not Apple. None of you are building a website for Apple. Please put your hand up in the chat because none of you are. Very few companies are in a position to have an Apple-like website. Very, very few. Increasingly fewer, I would argue. And so, yes, that might work for them, but to use that as a model for anybody else is absolutely stupid. It's going to be a total failure. People, if you grab someone off the street, they can probably name like 3 or 4 products that Apple has. But if you grab somebody off the street, for whatever business you're building a website for, nobody knows a damn thing about them. That is a huge difference. That's everything right there. You have to meet the visitor where they are. Apple's visitors are sophisticated and have, probably a long history with them, knowledge of their products, etc. But for random Joe's business you're building a website for, they do not have that. So that is just completely like not even relevant in my view.
But just for clarity, it's just go e-commerce. We don't have to do Apple. Just go e-commerce. E-commerce brands have a lot of different categories, a lot of different products in different categories. That's very common, and a lot of people in our audience are building e-commerce sites like this. Okay. And yes, people are learning on social media about companies, and they're seeing videos, and they're doing word of mouth stuff before they ever arrive on a website. And a lot of that is pre-sales. And a lot of that is somewhat of varying degrees of introduction to a company. But I don't know that I'm ready to agree that the vast majority of visitors already know what they want to do when they arrive on a website and just want to get there and they just want to do it. I still feel like there's a lot of browsing, there's a lot of deciding, there's a lot of weighing pros and cons, there's a lot of looking at this company versus that company. And those decisions do require a significant amount of content in most cases to sell them. It's got to be the right kind of content, obviously. But it also, I think, relies on a certain level of browsing as well, just poking around, going from page to page, navigating a web. I still think for a good, solid percentage of users that's very relevant, unless they came from a hyper focus. Like on social media, the only thing I would say that would be a difference is ads. We're running an ad campaign for this thing. Yes, the ad campaign is designed to get them in the mode of buying that thing. So let's get them on the site to that thing and don't let them get lost browsing and doing all this other stuff. That would be the context where that makes perfect sense. But for the rando who comes from just organic exposure, and my friend emails me that, hey, you got to check this company out. It's like right up your alley. Okay, I don't know anything about it. I click on it. I need that old website experience, perhaps, or maybe you're going to disagree.
I totally disagree with that. I think that percentage of visitors is so small, vanishingly small, and it doesn't speak to the way the information flows work on the internet now. It just doesn't. People always know going in, there's just not a lot of browsing and discovery happening on websites. Even if you were comparing like a couple different agencies and considering for service work, you would have been tipped off to like who's doing this work, like who do you even look for, and that you would either found that through a search and probably an ad placement, or through some sort of recommendation through a mutual, something like that. So they would have come into your consciousness in some other way prior to this, and that would have already narrowed your search significantly. A lot of times people aren't even showing the gumption to like really look around. It's like, oh, this is what somebody said. I'm just going to kind of go with this, and they get tunnel vision. I think that's more likely than the randos by like a factor of like some multiple at this point.
Okay, so
So
let's get real practical with it. Here's our
hold
e-commerce.
on, I wanted to make one distinction because you kind of brought up a lot of points there. I will draw a distinction, not like a full on like disclaimer, disqualifying distinction, but a distinction between e-commerce sites that have physical inventory versus every other kind of site. Okay, if you have physical inventory, that means you're going to have quite a few items, probably, and that means you can display a greater density of things because, like, let's say you're a disc golf store and you got like 50 discs you're selling. People need to access all 50 of those discs, because they might be looking for the whole gamut. You never know. But I do think there are some tweaks that need to be made. Like we're displaying some huge grid. I think maybe one disc, one atop the other. People just do this more infinite scroll TikTok style kind of thing. I would argue that if we were testing, this could be more effective than the grid. Who knows? But those are things that are specific to those types of websites, and that is the only exception I'm willing to draw at this point is for physical inventory. So I do think that's a different game. I don't actually work with that. I think that's the biggest pain in the ass of all time. I would charge $1 billion to do a freaking physical inventory website, but I know some people out there are definitely working with that. I mean, there's enough WooCommerce stuff to support it, but that's the only distinction I'm willing to draw there.
Yeah. I think in some cases it's just a UX decision more than anything. Like for me, and this is just my personal experience when I'm browsing e-commerce sites, disc golf, let's use that as an example. So a disc golf company might have this fucking hot new innovative disc, okay? And they could just put it on the page by the disc. And when I click on the disc, it allows me to choose a color. And maybe they have 12 different colors or patterns or whatever it is. There's that experience where I saw the disc, I clicked on the disc, now I get to choose variants. Or as I'm browsing through all of their available discs, it has the same disc over and over and over again in the grid of each color. And as I'm going down, it's kind of that way for all of their products. To me, that's actually a better experience. It's better to have a higher density grid of all of the options because I don't have to go into one and out of another to see what options are available for that one. They're just all there in the. I can just scroll up and down and see everything available to me, and that way it makes it easier for me to make my ultimate decision. But
yeah, I agree with that actually.
That.
I would argue that there's one, a real ninja can understand what the prevailing UI trends are out there and know that visitors are likely to be accustomed to this kind of thing, like certain Amazon conventions everyone's going to be familiar with. So you can use them in those cases. But again, these are exceptions. Like I only trust experts with exceptions. And I don't think most people are experts. So like I use caution.
I do agree. I do agree with that. There's too many non-experts making very important key decisions for websites. And this is something that I've harped on since the beginning of time, essentially, where I think people who allow their clients to write copy are crazy. I think that people who allow clients to dictate where things go on the website and what the website looks like and all this other stuff, I think they're crazy. I think that you're putting the least qualified person in charge of what's happening on the website. And then you are signing up to be responsible for the outcomes of the website. That's ludicrous. I've always been like, no. You have to lead this project. You have to be the one making the decision. Unless you're in a situation where you're just going to acknowledge that you're a pixel pusher. You don't really know client knows best. And you're not responsible for the outcome. If that's the situation you want to put yourself, but you're going to be broke if you put yourself in that situation. So that's still a lose-lose. So I'm totally with you there.
Well, I mean, kind of moving this discussion forward, like I had this new mantra that's kind of come about in the last few years, but I want to work in paradise. I want to work in paradise. And that means certainly not, if the client hires me as the expert, why the hell am I listening to them? That's not the way this works. That's not paradise. Another one is the systems I use. Having to tinker with WordPress and do different things with it. I'm sorry, guys. I think a lot of us just internalize and accept all the crap we have to do. It sucks. It sucks. I spent years of my life building what I call like a translator, so I could speak a very matter-of-fact language to this translator, and it tells WordPress all that absolute crazy BS it needs to be able to do the stuff I want it to do. That's one way that I have made sure that I get to work in paradise and not in a freaking favela. And so many things work along those lines. But I think the people who build sites for clients and basically who are building the internet, I think we should demand to work in paradise. Like, we have been slumming it for way too long. We wade through the muck and deal with all sorts of BS. Like, enough. There's no point in this. There's no point in this. I want to work in paradise.
So you've described some of it. What about the tech that we're actually using to do the work that we're doing? What does paradise look like in that regard?
Well, so I did a video in October of last year. It's on my YouTube channel that kind of kickstarted this discussion. I've been talking about it ever since. But basically, I showed the world what it would be like if the WordPress plugin system had been built the right way. If it was truly an object-oriented thing, if every plugin were an instance of this core plugin object, it would be able to do things like the following, okay? So WordPress has different places where you might want to insert options. You can do post meta, like on the content editing page. A plugin might have its own options page. So like there's that separate page there. There's the content editing screen, like I said. There's also within tags and categories and taxonomies and all that stuff, there's options that can be conveyed to those pages. I think there's a couple other places that I'm not even remembering right now. But bottom line is, the plugin architecture should have shortcuts. So you speak a very simple language, like give it an array of options, and it knows to populate those pages with these options. Or you could even give it an array, say like, here's my admin options array, and it knows that it has to spool up an admin page with all this stuff on it. And so, and that would also cover like the outputting, the saving, the retrieving of all those options. Right now, we have to do all those steps every time we convey any of those things. Like, all these things should be totally valet right from the get-go. I give it an array, it gives me everything else. It gives me the options output, it saves it, it sanitizes it, it brings it back to me exactly where I need it for usage, like within HTML output or whatever. Like, all that stuff should be happening. It is not. Like, that architecture is a joke. And so, like, that's one example of working in paradise. When I say that, like, this is what I mean. Like, the code bases that we have to manage to be able to do the great things that we do, or the really dynamic things, could be so amazing, gang. It could be so good, and like everybody would feel like absolute geniuses with this power at their fingertips. But we just do not have that. And then I could get into themes, it's even worse.
Yeah, getting into the themes would be okay. We've been down that road. So, but we're also facing this reality. The things that you just described are not going to happen in WordPress.
No,
they're not going to happen any time soon. So, what's the solution?
Well, to me, the solution is a new platform. I think the time has come. I thought this in as far back as 2012. I was like, well, because I built a replacement for the WordPress theme system. There is no WordPress theme system. It's an if-else tree that relies on file names. It's not real. And so back then, I built a modular template system that works in the way I described, with the options and all that stuff. And I was like, wow, this is the future. This is what's going to need to happen. But it was clear that WordPress could never just like transform itself to do that. Everything else that ever existed on the platform would be obsoleted. And at that time, even the plugin system was so huge, the theme system was so huge, the ecosystems, I mean, that it's just like it's untenable to do that. You would kill so much of the ecosystem. So it can't happen on WordPress. It never could happen on WordPress. But the momentum of that platform has been undeniable. I mean, it continued to grow massively from 2012 on. I would say there was a growth period from 2012 to 2016 in particular, with the growth of e-commerce on the platform, that really made WordPress that much stronger. I think it went from like 28 to 43% of the internet during that time. And so that kind of growth is undeniable. And so I was really kind of dejected about this for years, thinking like, wow, it's we're going to be building on this shitty platform forever because the momentum is just too huge. But what happened last year with Matt it changed my mind on the whole thing. Like, this was the opening. This is it. It's going to change. And so on October 17th, I started building a new platform that works in the way I've described. Totally object-oriented modular system that is built the right way. Minimal PHP architecture, will run on any Apache system. Minimal setup requirements, no BS, just boom, boom, boom. Everything that we need to make the simple kinds of pages that we're talking about today, with an e-commerce layer. Initially e-commerce for like info sites and communities, so not physical inventory up front, but eventually yes. But that's what I'm building now. And I wanted to build this for years and felt like it would be totally useless to build it because WordPress was so big, but the events of the last 6 months have made me feel differently.
So that was the tipping point. It wasn't a few years into the Gutenberg, because I know you're not a huge fan of the Gutenberg
It's a
project.
disaster. It's a
But
disaster.
so it wasn't that really wore you down. It was the Matt thing was the final straw.
Yeah. So one thing I learned through my public scrutiny that started in 2010 is that perceptions matter more than software. And I hate that, but it's the truth. Like marketing and sales matter more than the software that you're selling or your business, whatever you think about your product, marketing and sales is the engine. Your product really is not. And perceptions kind of play into the whole marketing sales side of things. And if the perception is that WordPress is what we use, no amount, like you can't out engineer that, right? But the perception is finally changing. Gutenberg killed a lot of goodwill, and then this on top of that, I think, has made enough people who are good people who are actually building stuff scratch their chins and think, maybe there is something better for us. And so, without that shift in perception, this was not going to be possible, in my opinion.
All right, I think this is a good segue into the part of the show where people get to participate. So I'm going to turn this over to Mark here too, so he can get some words in. But I want to put out a call to anybody listening in the X space. Go ahead and raise your hand to join the speaker pool. If you want to come on to agree with things that you've heard, if you want to come on to disagree with things that you've heard, add your own 2 cents. I also want to turn it over to our simulcasting audience on YouTube. If you want to ask a question, you can ask a question in the chat. It has to have hashtag Q in front of it so that we can find it. But Mark will be looking on his channel. I'll be looking on my channel. And again, don't be shy if you're in the listener pool on X Spaces. Go ahead and raise your hand. Let's get you into the speaker pool and let's hear from you. But I'll turn it over to Mark real quick.
Yeah, 100%, guys. Definitely, if you have any questions, drop them in the chat. We'd love to hear you in here too. I'm sure Chris is more than happy to answer questions and field different stuff, because a lot of interesting stuff we're hearing here. Chris, I don't know if people are going to ask about this specifically, but I know it was on kind of our initial questioning and everything like that, and we've kind of started to kind of teeter into the area. How do we feel about the licensing portion, like the open source? I know obviously you have literal physical experience back in like the early 2010s around this, and now you mentioned that you're kind of starting your own. You're literally in the process of building your own platform. So like, what is your we also, more context, we've had a couple. We always have conversations about open source and licensing and things like that, but we had a couple earlier episodes of WP Townhall where we're actually talking more specifically. People were giving their thoughts. What's your high level on this whole thing? The way that WordPress handles it, the way that other platforms handle it, how you would handle it in your platform. What's your thought around the licensing portion?
All right, that's a great question. Open source to me is a huge red flag. All right, open source means 2 things to people at large. Number 1, it means free. Number 2, it means a community where I can contribute and feel welcome. I think the free part of it is the most legitimate part of it. I think the other one is something that people want to believe and want to feel good about, but I do not think it is a necessary component in success. I think that inclusionary component is a way to build a massive audience and a massive following, but I think it is absolutely the biggest tightrope of all time. I think we've seen what's happened with WordPress. I think if you don't see this as a massive rug pull and a slap in the face, you're just not paying attention. I will not be involved with anything like that. I do not want people to feel like I have exploited them or done a rug pull or anything like that. It is really, really gross to me. And I want to make that very clear to anyone listening that what has happened with this, the way the WordPress thing is unfolded, is disgusting. I don't want anything to do with it, to be honest. But so that gives me great pause, because I know that those preconditions and those the perceptions that people have when they go into this whole open source thing, some people have those and they're not going to be able to disabuse themselves of that notion. And they're going to want to make anything new that they adopt into what they wanted WordPress to be. And that is just it's a myth. It's a mirage. It's not a real thing you can grasp for. So I don't know what to say to those people other than like, hope you were paying attention. Hope you maybe learned a lesson from this last episode. But if you go down that path again, you're going to be bummed.
Chris, do you feel like the data liberation there is a third part to that you didn't mention, which is people feel like it's a safety net, that their data is liberated, in the sense that, hey, if this actor becomes a bad actor, I still own all my stuff. I still have the software. I'm in control, right? Do you feel like that's a mirage as well?
Well, I feel like it's not really real. If you have distributed software that you install on your own server and run, it's yours anyway, right? No one's going to mess with your data. No one can. I mean, Matt could put something in WordPress tomorrow in an update that nukes your whole database. We just trust that he won't, but that's true of anybody, not just, open source doesn't change that.
Right. And what I've been trying to make the point of is that the value, it's I think where people misunderstand it is, they're like, we could just keep moving WordPress forward. You can't. You can't.
False.
You can't.
Yeah.
That's the mirage, right? But I think so many people bought into that. No, you have to leave WordPress. Let's just be clear about that. If Matt rug pulls, you have to leave work. You can't just be, well, it's open source, we can just keep going with work. No, you can't keep going with WordPress. You have to go somewhere else. You can fork it, but as we've discussed, that's going to require tens of millions of dollars, big team, and it's very likely to fail. So it's not practical.
Right. It's super self-defeating. I've been in the weeds with this for a few months now. I can tell you right now, there's no chance. No chance.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have any questions in your channel, Mark?
Well, I do want to say though, I prefer the MIT license, the MIT open source license. It's very no nonsense. It's cut and dry. There's no BS. There's not a whole lot of stuff to figure out. It's just very straightforward. The question that we need to ask ourselves, and the question that I've had to ask myself, is how do I want to distribute this software? I think that for any platform to take over the mantle that WordPress has had, it needs to be free. It's as simple as that. And so I want a license that supports this free thing that's going to go out to everybody, and that a lot of people are going to be relying on for their businesses and for their websites. It needs to be simple, it needs to be straightforward, and the software needs to be free. That's my tenets right now.
And where is the funding going to come from?
It's coming from me right now, which is not great.
But yeah, that you will ultimately need. Is there a funding plan?
So right now the funding plan is pretty loose, but it goes something like this. So you got the basic platform, and then I've got some real simple add-ons that you probably would want on your site if you were actually going to build a business website with this thing. And those add-ons come with a one-time fee. In addition to that, if you want to be part of this community, so to speak, sort of like the WordPress community or contributor on WordPress.com or WordPress.org, pardon, if you want to see like a similar situation to that, I will have some forums, but I think it's going to cost something nominal like $17 a year to be a contributing member.
Cool. What you got, Mark?
Well, I mean, we don't have to dive too deeply into this, but I mean, the thing that I've noticed over the last 2 years of being really deeply into the WordPress ecosystem is kind of a lot of the stuff that we brought up here. You bring up the first thing of open source equals free. I think that's definitely good in some ways, but again, as Kevin just said there, stuff doesn't just happen, right? Money is real. We need to obviously make money in order to keep having literally whatever software or whatever product we have. So just the one little tiny note in there is with an add-on, the add-on model, for instance, we talk about this all the time. It doesn't matter if it's a platform or if it's a plugin or whatever, this idea of lifetime deals, lifetime licenses for software, specifically in WordPress. Do you have any opinions on that? Because everybody hates subscriptions, so to speak, when they're on the consumer end in some ways, but then you really look at it, it's like, well, would I rather just pay for this thing, so it keeps getting updated, or would I rather pay for it one time and then in 2 years have to find something different because they're out of money now? So just real quick on that.
This is a bigger question, dude. This is kind of the hugest question that's facing all of us. So everyone who operates with websites and does this kind of business, this is this sort of Damocles hanging over our heads right now. So we are in the midst, I talk about this on Twitter a lot. We are in the midst of a subscription event horizon. What has happened is everybody's transitioned to some sort of subscription model. Consumers have way too many subscriptions. They have a need to cull them. The subscription providers are shitty at doing business. They constantly have to raise their prices. There's competitive concerns there, and also just some waste concerns. And all that creates a ton of pressure for people to cull the subscriptions they have. As much as we like to feel good about the work that we do, the reality is that our website component subscriptions are low on that totem pole. If it's you against Netflix, who do you think is going to win? Netflix is going to get that money and you're going to be out. So the subscription event horizon is real. And I'm thinking about this all the time. This is like my number one concern with how I push this new thing forward. It's like, I know that I can have a small little business department, whatever you want to call it, that will work with these, one-time fee for certain components. And this works with these components because I've really refined them over the years. I don't have to do that much work. It's not like it takes a bunch of upkeep. So it will work in that case. For the whole platform, which I said has to be free, there is some stuff to be done there, but we are kind of accustomed to, or we naturally think that the thing has to work like WordPress. Like WordPress has these quarterly updates and they've done all this stuff. Well, I think if you take a step back, here's a couple things are true. One thing that's true is that a basic platform, what it needs to do is actually finite. It is not an infinite creep sort of thing. Yes, things change on the internet. Yes, things are going to have to be tweaked, but it is not an infinite level of creep. And so a platform, therefore, could have all the basic stuff built out at some point and not really need that much input from there on out. And it's important to actually define the boundaries so that the thing doesn't spiral out of control. Like WordPress has sort of had this internal power struggle between like, oh, who should run the updates? And there's been all this focus over the years, which I'm sorry, it's going to offend somebody. I don't care. But like all this focus on accessibility, like so much of the stuff that's gone into the platform the last 10, 12 years has been all these accessibility features used by 1%. This is another theme of mine. It's called the 99 to 1 fallacy. We sacrifice 99% to focus on this 1% of stuff that never gets used. So all the stuff that's been quote unquote built into WordPress the last decade has just been a joke. They'd have been better off just refining everything that they have internally to make it easier for people to use and develop on. But no, that's not what's happened. So I do think it's possible to build so my larger point is I do think it's possible to build a finite platform that doesn't require that much input and therefore would not require that subscription-based model to survive.
See, I don't know if I'm not on the anti-subscription bandwagon. I don't know if I agree with the Netflix is going to win over WP plugin. Like, for example, if the WP plugin is insanely valuable to my business workflow and I make a shitload of money from it, I'm definitely, well, one, I don't need to cancel Netflix because I'm not fucking poor. But two is I would cancel Netflix before I canceled the thing that was enabling me to like do my work, right?
Listen, I agree. I'm kind of being a little bit tongue in cheek there. The really good stuff will have a place, but the fact that like this idea that everybody's going to do their stuff that way is just not going to work.
Yeah,
there's only a few key components in this entire ecosystem. I'd argue fewer than 40.
Yeah, it becomes a competitive. It's a very competitive marketplace, and people can only tolerate so many subscriptions. That is 100% true. I think that's actually helpful for the user to not accumulate a bunch of shit that they don't need. They're constantly looking at their stack, at their life in general. You know, what am I paying for? What are my priorities? I actually think that there's a good side to that. What I will say is what makes me very uncomfortable is using free software. Makes me very uncomfortable. Automatic CSS is, we're actually in the process of completely transitioning it right now. The PHP processor that we use is part of the open source WordPress project. It's run by like 2 different guys in their spare time whenever they get a chance. And sorry, I can't run my main product off of that. I am very comfortable when I know that the provider of my software is rich and active. That's what I would like. I would like them to be very well off and very active. I want them to have a lot of money, a lot of cash flow, and a lot of motivation. That
totally agree with this. I mean, this has been the case forever. This is the utopia we want to move to because that's a much more stable system.
I don't want to be like, oh, it's free. That's so warm and fun. No, that's cold and like very scary. I don't want the people that control very important software in my life to be underfunded, unfunded, broke, poor, whatever. I want them to be very focused and very well off. That's like what makes me warm and fuzzy at night.
Yeah, well, I agree. Well, I mean, look, so the game that we're playing here, if WordPress powers 43% of the internet, you give me 1% of that. Believe me, I'll be making millions of dollars a year with these add-on components. It'd be fine. But, and like I said, if it's a finite system, then that's more than covered. I'm making sure those bases are covered. I mean, obviously, this is not tenable without without that kind of thing. I also think, you have your core components, like anything that's e-commerce adjacent. That's gonna be a money making thing. That's a subscription model thing. There's something to that. But I have a question for you. Is your parser, does it do SESS?
A SAS processor. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what it. Yeah, that's what it is. It's a PHP.
So it's not using that library that's been around since last updated 2014. It's on GitHub. It's the most popular one. I don't know what it's called.
That's probably it. Yes, that's probably it.
Okay. I think that's the only one I'm aware of that totally works. I'm using the same
Only
one.
PHP processor. Yes, correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we found a different avenue, so we're in the process of transitioning to that currently.
Yeah, that itself is a massive piece of software, and in my opinion, it's the absolute worst kind because it relies on so much regex. That's
Yeah.
absolutely the worst kind of shit to build. Oh,
Yeah, and what it's done, while we're sitting around waiting for it to be updated, I can't modernize all the SAS and the framework because the processor doesn't process it. All I get is errors and a bunch of other nonsense. So it's it's forcing us.
we should probably have an aside about that. I've figured out ways to work around most of that stuff over the years. I've been using that for 12 years now.
Yeah. We just found our new path forward that has zero limitations and is probably, I don't know, 75% faster as well. So it's
That doesn't suck.
working out. Yeah. Okay. Do you have anything else, Mark? I got one question, but I'll bounce it back to you.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, we're bouncing all around like this thing now, especially with the, the money talk, so to speak, subscriptions and everything. I had a question in my chat from our friend Matt Medeiros, and he said, open source, the value is like, I'll paraphrase, but like the value of open source, like in a system like this, is that you can obviously see another value is that you can see all the code, right? And it encourages like a third party ecosystem, like something that Thesis has benefited from in the WordPress ecosystem, just as an example. So like in your path forward in the platform that you're talking about, Chris, is that something that like what do you think? And I think I might have seen a video with your thoughts on this, but I want to hear it here. So are you of the opinion that that's not really the best way to go? You can't have too many cooks in the kitchen, so to speak. I don't know if you phrased it like that before, but like, all the contributors, and like, you get this weird thing where it's like some contributors are paid and they just do it for fun, and some people are sponsored. Like your path forward with a platform that was maybe free at the base layer and has the add-ons, like what's that look like from a development of not just the core product, but also the ecosystem around it? Do you have anybody else involved?
Okay. Yeah. So a few points there. A few points. Number one, open source has nothing to do with whether or not you can see the code of a product. That's always just run me so the wrong way. If you install the shit on your server, you can look at the code. I don't care how you got it or what license it has. So that is a specious basis. I want that to die. It's stupid. Next thing, this whole open contributor model, I think, is insane, gang. It is insane. Here's why it's insane. It assumes a level of aptitude and a level of understanding of the entire product that is non-existent. The reality is some people are extremely good engineers and extremely high achievers who understand entire systems, and other people have very limited concerns and have tunnel vision and zero knowledge about what it takes to build a large-scale distributed product that millions of people rely on. Though that gap cannot be breached, can't cross that. You can't build a bridge over that. There's nothing you can do. If you open that door for everybody to come in, you are going to have a favela and a piece of crap, for a callback from my thing earlier. I absolutely ascribe to something I call architect theory. You need one architect who knows everything that's going on in the system. That way, when you tug on a string over here, you know what's likely to happen elsewhere in the system. Because unintended consequences are like, this is the story of everything. Oh, we wanted to do this. Oh, but look at all this other stuff that was affected when we did this. Those outcomes must be avoided. The only way to avoid that is to have sort of an all-knowing architect in charge of this thing. And so I guarantee you that the architected system is going to have better results over time, and fewer weird stuff happening, just much tighter. It's going to be so much better. In fact, it's hard to imagine because nothing that you work with right now is like this.
That's music to my ears.
Do you real quick on that? Everything we're talking about here obviously is, maybe we're generalizing here and there, but everybody's situation is kind of different. We're talking, big topics here, obviously, but one specific thing that I think is consistently coming up, and we're kind of hitting on it, kind of not, but really particular to that right there, is how do you manage and mitigate the risk of all these things. Like, so for instance, I like that last point. Like, I totally agree with what you're saying. Like, I like in a lot of ways, like I understand that. But then the devil's advocate is like, okay, now you only have like one person that kind of knows everything. So if they get hit by a bus or something, like obviously maybe just documentation and stuff like that. But like, how do you process risk with all of these things that you're saying here on those types of things when you're talking business sense and platform longevity?
Well, I actually love that question because here's the deal: if let's say that this platform is already built, I'm pretty far along, but it's not ready for public consumption yet by any means. It's going to be a while, but let's say it's already built and you guys are using it and can look at it. We can go look at the code. Somebody's going to be able to figure out what the hell is going on through reverse engineering this thing, but all the answers are right there. Like honest to God, like this has kind of been the biggest thing for me to consider. When I put this out there, everyone's going to see the answers. They're going to have them. They're going to be running the answers right there on their server. If you want to see, inside the machine, you want to achieve this amazing level of understanding, it is all going to be right there for people to see and to decipher for themselves. And that's sort of like the amazing thing about distributed software, and also the scary thing. It's like, well, I'm naked here. This is it. Here it all is. Totally butt naked out in front of everybody. All the thinking, all the magic, all that stuff, everything that as a creator, you want to kind of hold close. You have to bear in front of everyone, and that's kind of what I'm starting to embrace about it, though. Like the answers will be there. Like if I get hit by a bus, I told my wife, make sure the kids, my son in particular, like make sure he knows how to decipher this thing at some point. Like that'll be his mission, and then he can move on after that. But like this will be the thing he needs to unpack and understand for himself, because he will understand if he's able to do that. He will understand the thinking that went into this, and it will kind of open up all these avenues for him. So once it's out there, I kind of feel like that is the insurance policy.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, got to do it somehow. Obviously, got to mitigate that risk. I mean, for that. So, yeah, Kevin.
Yeah. Well, we're over time. I think what we're going to have to do is bring Chris back. It's always, we have so much to, there are more avenues and rabbit holes we could absolutely go down. But we need to save it probably for a follow-up. I see Matt just requested to speak.
We did,
right on time.
We did start at 11:30. So.
Oh, you're right. We did start at 11:30. Oh no. Okay.
Unless
Matt,
you gotta stop.
Yes. No, I don't.
No, it's good.
I was on the old schedule. Okay. Let me invite him back. Matt was like in the process of raising his hand.
Hey.
There he is.
Hey, Chris. Help me understand your perspective on open source. You say that if I'm getting this right, because I'm really having a hard time following, but your new product will be open source, and that's something that you're using for the community to see and understand what you're building, and that's like your safety net. So it sounds like open source to me, but at the same time you say open source isn't something that you particularly follow. Help me understand your side of open source.
All right, so I tried to explain the two ways people see open source: free software versus like this community inclusion sort of thing. To me, I feel like that's self-explanatory if you've been in the WordPress game for a while. Is that clear with everybody else, or is that sort of not clear? Do I need to clarify that?
I think that's your perspective. It's not something I agree with, but you can continue with that lens.
I could cite some examples. Like, how about WordPress putting out there on, like, I don't know, there's some 2016 release. They made a big deal about it. There was like an all-female team, something like that. Like that is, to me, that is goofy. But I know a lot of people spoke to that as like stuff that they like about the open source aspect of it, the open community, that kind of thing. I'm pushing back against that specifically, but I do think that that's something a lot of people attach themselves to when they see open source. But if you don't agree with that, it's fine. But I think that's
because I believe I think you're just conflating two different things with open source like that.
Well,
to me, that's exactly not open source.
I think that's how Matt Mullenweg politicized the platform, through the use of open source to get people to buy into it, that's like the negative side of open source, the cudgel, if you will.
Yeah, I just simply don't agree with that perspective.
All right, that's fine. That's fine. I definitely think.
But the point is like if people say we should embrace open source, it's for the reasons of knowing what code you're running. You say that's silly, because if you can install it on your server, you can see the code. You can when it's something that is a piece of software like a PHP package or something like that. But I encourage the use of open source because that's not always the case. Like open source goes far greater than just like a WordPress site. So there's that perspective. Like we should encourage the use of open source because we can all see it from all pieces of software, everything from AI to your operating system to your website. So there's that. And it sounds like you're going open source with this new platform. So it's hard for me to follow this when one half of you is like, that's a silly thing. And the other half of you is, I'm going to open source so people can see it.
Well, I just think open source has no actual meaning. So what I say, or what I'm going to do, it's going to be free. It's going to have an MIT license. You can have that mean whatever it means to you. It's going to be a PHP package. Everything that's included is going to be visible. Everything is going to be, auditable, whatever. The thing's going to be totally documented. Everyone's going to know and see everything about the platform. There's going to be zero hidden anything, zero shenanigans, just all straightforward, all right there for everyone to see.
Correct if I'm wrong. I think what Chris is saying is that in the context of WordPress, because I do agree with you, Matt, in general, that like there's a lot of software we can't see the code for. If it was open source and it was shared and it was that's like a philosophy, right? That gives us unprecedented access to things that we might not have access to. But I think Chris's argument maybe is that in the context of WordPress, you'd be able to see all that shit anyway. And so their WordPress is kind of using it as a more of a marketing and a feel good and we talked about the mirage of this earlier, where people go into it thinking that they have some real semblance of control, that they have some real semblance of safety, and that if WordPress goes bad, they can just pick it up and continue on with WordPressing, and they really just can't do any of that. And so a lot of it is just marketing hype. That's used to get contributors, that's used to get people to adopt the platform. And really the value they think is there is not all that much.
That's a good summary of my position.
Interesting. So, I mean, we kind of went through a couple of those things, but like, just so we're like, I feel like tying loose ends, because I do agree that every time I hear the words open source, it's kind of like a different definition, so to speak. And like we talked about earlier, like, oh, it means free, it means this. So you said a couple things there, particularly, regardless of what the definition of that was. Like you said, it's going to be free. People are going to see everything, MIT license. So one other thing I could think of for you, Chris, is like, are you going to allow people to like fork the new platform?
Yeah, there's nothing I can do to stop that.
Okay.
You just have to maintain the attribution of the files, but that's the nature of the beast. That's what I said. That's kind of the scary part of an open source license. Like, you're naked out in front of everybody. Somebody can just take it. I've learned that if the community turns on you, then you could be the loser in something like that. But I think the reality, and there's a larger force in play there, is that if people trust the architect and realize, well, it got to this point because of this person, if we turn on that person now, it's not going to be the same thing. I think that is real as well. And I think this WordPress episode has kind of revealed that to a lot of people who may have otherwise not really seen that truth.
Got it. So then the last part of it, I mean, the only other one that I could think of, if we're thinking of like line items to like compare like different types of software. Do they do this? Do they?
I do want to make a point, though. A lot of people attribute like such and such thing to open source. I'm like, well, open source doesn't do anything. It's just an idea and a wrapper around the thing. The software actually does the work. So I've always struggled with that. I'm like, how does open source get credit for any outcomes? That's really odd to me.
Yeah. So I think the last bit of it then is this idea of, again, when people say open source and they think maybe WordPress or something, it's like, we talked about it a little earlier, but you're also saying with your new platform, they can see the code, they can fork the code if they want, you can't do anything for that, but the actual, we'll call it like Project X or whatever it's called, right? Like this actual platform that you're talking about here, you and potentially your team, but only you are the ones that are officially maintaining that. So in the sense of like how WordPress works, there may be third-party contributors and things, like there's not going to be any of that, if I'm correct. And also, would you entertain, we're obviously theoretical here, but would you entertain people making third-party like plugins for it? I mean, in a sense, they'd be able to technically, right? So is that something that how are you going to navigate that?
Yeah. So the roadmap looks something like this. I am trying to do all the basic core features, like the main component stuff. So it's really themes and plugins. I'll reveal more about this in the next couple months, but like themes and plugins are the two main components of the system. Everything is a plugin. Okay. I know it's not like that right now with WordPress, but just imagine every little thing you see is a plugin. That's the way this thing works. People can develop all the plugins they want. The core is going to have all the core plugins it needs to be the core. And then everything else is going to be up to the ecosystem to produce. I don't want to get too far in the weeds. We'll have I think we should do another space about one theme to rule them all versus like a whole litany of themes. I know Kevin's been talking about that recently. But that, again, I want to sort of avoid that for now. Just imagine everything you see is a plugin. The nav menu on the admin side's a plugin, whatever. Just everything is a plugin. The community can develop as many plugins as it wants. It can do all that. My plan is to develop that core system to make all that stuff work. And then I know there's areas where I'm not super expert, and I want to make sure that the platform is completely shored in those ways. But once the core platform is in place and people see, oh, this is the way the code needs to be, then I'm hopefully going to be able to bring in some contributors to round out those core business parts of the platform that I know we're all going to need if we're going to be building business websites or whatever else for people. So it is me for now, with certainly eventually it's like most of the ecosystem is going to be built out on a plug-in basis by third-party people. And people can do whatever they want. They run their own update servers, they run their own thing. It's like, if you're a sustainable business, you're going to be able to run your own ecosystem on this platform with no interruptions, no problems at all. So unlike WordPress, where you have to go through the choke point of the repository, everyone will be able to run their own repository on this, and there's nothing anyone can do to stop you.
Gotcha.
So for example, if a client is running 3 of your plugins and you run your own update repository, they're always going to be able to access those as long as your stuff is running. There's nothing the main platform can do about it.
Gotcha. So
so that's another measure of protection that I think any platform should have.
With all of that context, then if somebody, once the platform's launched and everything like that, and you have all the, T's dotted or I's dotted, T's crossed, all that sort of stuff, right? And you have it like operational. If somebody asks you point blank, is this platform open source? What would you say in like an FAQ?
Well, what do you mean by that? Do you mean, is it open source in the sense that anyone can contribute?
I mean,
because that's not even true of WordPress.
Yeah, that's a whole nother discussion. Yeah, but okay. So so you'd have to define it further. Again,
No,
agree.
It's not true. No. No, I have a nice house in a nice neighborhood. I don't let anyone I want just into the grounds of my home to litter it with trash and stuff. We see how that goes in Austin with what's currently going on with homeless camps everywhere. It's trash and shit all over the place. Mm-hmm. I want a nice place.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think, a lot of good context there. I think that's a deeper discussion that we've tried to tackle before. It's a hard one to fully flesh out. But
yeah, but here's the thing: when the system is built the right way, the plugin is really just a way to interface with the software. That's all you need to make it whatever you want. And in fact, the way this works is that any installation of this can be completely tailored to exactly what you want. You can change the admin UIs, you can strip stuff out, you can have it be exactly what you want it to be. That's my goal, is to make it so that the architect has no say in how people actually use it in the end. You can have it, it's totally up to you how you want to do it. You're not forced to see this or that. You can have it be exactly what you want it to be. That's the promise of software. Like, that's actually good software.
Got it. Okay, so I think of one more to put a bow on that. Then is somebody comes to you, because we have people in our chats here like asking like, is there any way to like follow you and what you're building? Through the your X profile in there and everything. But for those types of people that are going to be intrigued by this way of thinking, this methodology, this new technology, right? What is the value prop? Is it purely from a technical perspective? Like, this is like leaner and meaner than WordPress and everything like that, and it has a lot of beneficials, like it's still free and that type of stuff. Is it just mainly technical? And then the second part of the question is, who is it for? Would you say it's for everyone? Is it for certain people? Like where is your methodology and that platform? Like, what's the whole ethos around those two pieces?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's for anyone who, if you're going to build a website, you would have chosen WordPress. Now you're going to choose this. Anyone who wants to build and work in Paradise is going to want to do this. Anyone who wants absolute control over the final outcome. So, like, for example, you build a site for a client. Half the shit in the WordPress admin, you probably never want them to touch or see. Really hard to get rid of that. It's not worth the time and the input and all that. With this platform, you'll be able to do that so easily. you can create these custom tailored environments for clients that just speak to exactly what they want to do. If all they do is create content, well, by God, that's all the admin's going to be for them. And that's perfect. So, an environment that can be tailor made to exactly what the person needs is vastly preferable, in my opinion, to what we have now. I think you had another part to your question that I'm blanking on.
Yeah, I mean, just that was the market part. Just like what the main advantage is.
Oh
but
yeah,
I think-
who's it for? So it's for end users, it's for builders, it's for everyone who's choosing WordPress now. This will be what you choose in the future. That's a huge chunk of people.
Gotcha.
If you want to build a website and make pages for the future, this is the way to do it.
Cool, sweet. Kevin, you got anything?
I'm just we started on how websites need to be different. We've got so many places.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's fun. No, I think we definitely need to come back and talk about some individual topics in more depth, like open source for sure. I've got more. I'm actually about to do a video on it in the context of WordPress, specifically in the context of the existence of the license and how it's being used. Because I think that's part of that's part of what exposes the fairy tale a little bit. Again, not against open source. Like I agree with what Matt says and like his arguments outside of the context of WordPress. I think WordPress has created a very different context of open source. The way they use that term, the way they promote that term, and how they're using their license. So I think we have to come back and talk about that. My audience specifically, I'm reading the chat. They want to talk more about the Gutenberg side of things. They want to talk more about the plugin only concept. So there's 2 additional rabbit holes that we can go down. We're all over the map here.
So one point I forgot to make. So Mark asked earlier, if people want to follow along, my YouTube channel is the best place for just that kind of content. You get no other noise, no other junk. It's at The Real Pearsonified is my YouTube channel. I've just been posting basically future website type stuff since last October, basically since the WordPress thing blew up. So that is the place to see all that content.
Sweet, I'll drop that in my chat. People were asking about that. Appreciate that. Sweet.
Let's do a final call. If you are in the listener pool and you want to be in the speaker pool, you need to raise your hand ASAP. Matt, you're still in the speaker pool. Do you have any final thoughts? I don't know if he's technically just a listener now or if he's still with us.
This UI leaves some to be desired. Sometimes it's a little wonky.
He's got a muted mic on my UI.
It's a little weird.
I think I was looking for comments in my chat and everything. I think for the most part, people are just intrigued by the discussion. They didn't have a ton to add.
Yeah.
I mean, like here's something, just an image I want to leave you with. So Matt works with Gravity Forms, which is a very successful WordPress plugin. I can't wait till people can see the contrast between the code base for what it takes to have Gravity Forms on WordPress versus what it will take to have it on my platform. That right there. Once people see that, that will be the thing you cannot unsee. If you have dealt with stuff like this, if you have built stuff like this, once you see when your code base is like seriously 15% the size it used to be and way more organized and easy to mess with, things change. Even the thoughts about the subscription model begin to change. You're like, well, damn, it really doesn't take that much work at all, does it? So I'm just saying, this is it's a transformative thing when you actually get to work in paradise.
What kind of timeline are we on to arrive at paradise?
This is the greatest question of all. So I got beat to death with this when I was developing Thesis 2 from 2010 to 2012. I had no idea how long it would take. It ended up taking me 2 years to get the first product out the door and another year or so of refinements before it was really ready for action. Now, that was my first time hacking through the jungle, so it's really hard on that first pass. I have that experience behind me now, so I can do it more quickly now. But the reality is all the stuff that WordPress does is a lot. It is a lot. So I've pretty much got the basics of the theme system built. I've pretty much got the basics of the plugin system built. That is huge, but like user management's not there. There's no e-commerce stuff. That's even going to be like a phase 2 thing. So the platform will be out and released before the e-com capabilities are even added. I have an editor, and I mostly know how the editor is going to work and be incorporated, but like it's not actually all the way incorporated yet. So, I mean, there's just a lot of little stuff to button up that I know is going to take a lot of time, and it's just hard to predict. So I don't know. My I want to have this thing running and operable sometime in March, but it could be a year after that before it's really battle ready. Now, I'm obviously don't want it to be that long. I'm hopeful that I can really have something that's compelling to show by the summer. But you know, you never. It's hard to say, dude. It is hard to say. It's like when you do something for the first time, it's hard to say.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm sure Mark and we're going to keep our eye on it. We're going to put the links in the show notes and the descriptions on the channel so that everybody else can keep an eye on it. And I think what we're definitely going to do is schedule you back for some more focused discussions in some of these different areas, because it's always fun. It's always spicy.
Yeah, we should talk about the theme problem, because you mentioned it. You nailed it. The truth is, in one theme to rule them all, but that should be the topic, because that's not well understood.
All right, we'll get with you behind the scenes. We'll schedule another one. But for now, we'll put this one in the books. Chris Pearson, everybody, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's fun. And good questions, too.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, guys. Everybody on X Spaces, we're done on YouTube. Everybody on X Spaces, have a great rest of your day. Peace.
Yeah. Later, guys.
All right. That was something. There's a lot of context in there. Appreciate you guys joining in and everything like that. If we're still on the stream here, I gotta say real quick, unrelated. I really like this idea of doing the little like couple minutes before, couple minutes after type thing on YouTube. I think it's going well. I apologize about this audio situation. I have to talk with my resident audio engineer, Matt Medeiros, to see if he can help me figure that out. But that's very weird because it doesn't happen right away. It happens only on other people, I think, and it happens after a speaker gets added to the space. So I don't know, but hopefully it's not terrible. And again, if you want to listen to it, if you couldn't listen to it here, we will put it on the podcasting platforms, and it should be fine there because the audio that comes out of X is fine. There's something weird between like Restream and me sharing and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, thank you guys for being here. That was really interesting. I know everybody. That was an interesting one specifically because everyone knows Chris. Like I probably know Chris the least, so to speak, because I wasn't around like when everything happened as he was building Thesis. But I thought that was a great conversation overall. You know, some things were, kind of like, I don't know a good word for it, like innovative, but like, like they kind of shock you because you're like, like makes you think a little differently. I like having those conversations because they do keep me kind of centered in what I'm thinking and make me kind of think about, hey, could this be different? Could that be different? Obviously, I wish him best of luck with everything he's doing, and we will keep tabs on that. If you guys haven't followed him already, he makes, again, every piece of content that I see from Chris is interesting. You know what I mean? Like whether you agree, disagree, it's something to at least like consume and then give your thoughts on. So I thought that was a really great conversation, and yeah, so we'll continue to keep an eye on that. And other than that, Thursdays 11 a.m. is when I will be streaming next. So tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern. And if you guys have been following me on social media, I got hit in the face with a hockey stick, so I'm going to look pretty funny. But it's healing up, and I don't have any pain, so not a huge deal. But yeah, that's all I got. Really appreciate you guys always. I know I say that a lot, but I really do appreciate the attention, and I want to continue to provide value for you. So, yep, that's all we got for now. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will talk to you tomorrow.